how did you meet Mom? You said you met her at church?
We were both members of Grace United Church, and as we grew, we knew each other, but when we got to be teenagers, we started a teenage group at the church, and we were both involved with that pretty deeply. And we had several friends, the Johnson family I remember particularly, Ben and Nancy and George. And Mr. Johnson was our Sunday school teacher. I don't know whether it was boys, just for boys. In those days, they kind of kept boys and girls separated. But eventually, we started a young people's group, and that was for boys and girls, whoever wanted to come. And I think we helped keep people off the streets, so to speak. And they knew that once a week they could come and have fun at our young people's meetings. They were very, well, they were organized to a point, but anything sort of went, whatever you wanted to talk about. And
so it was a bit free-flowing.
Free-flowing, that's a good word for it, yeah. And
so were you and Mom involved in the organization? Were you involved in the concept and you were involved in the organization, or was it more your parents?
It was a group of the older young peoples, the ones that have been there quite a long time. And if you remember the Johnson family, you know the Johnsons. Mr. Johnson, he was a staunch supporter for us to get things going. And so Mom and I kind of paired up a little bit, and the time between church, that was at 11 to 12, and then there was a gap before Sunday school of 2 to 3 hours. So as Mom and I got closer together, we used to go for walks out York Street, if it was nice weather, like, of course. If it was sunny, and we'd talk and spend a lot of time together. And then we would walk back to the church in time for the Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
And that way I got to know all of the Johnson family, of Sylvia, George, and Ben.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Johnson was our Sunday school teacher, so that was a big help growing up. Mr. Johnson was I think he was a machinist somewhere in a factory, so he didn't put on any airs or anything like that. He was very down to earth, and I got to admire him an awful lot, and became friends with George and Ben and Sylvia, and we've been friends for seems like forever.
Yeah. So when that was started, Mom was, you said, 14 or 15, so she was in the workforce by then?
She was in the workforce at 15. Yeah, she had to quit it at maybe 13 or 14. She finished grade 8. She was very smart. She skipped a couple of grades, I believe. But times were tough in those days, and her father was a useless bum, to put it
bluntly.
Yes, that's all I can think about him. He didn't add anything to the family. He just came back every once in a while, and for some reason his wife would take him back in, and then all of a sudden he'd be gone again. And so he didn't contribute anything to the to my wife Elsie and her sister Jones growing up. And he didn't. I don't think he contributed much in the way of money either. So Mrs. Elsie's mother had to work. I guess it was in those days. It was between 8 and 10 hours a day, and then 4 hours on Saturday.
So what was Mom doing? What job did Mom have at the time?
Well, she went to work with her mother.
Oh, okay.
But after she did so well at school that the teachers got her a job at another place. I think it was Westinghouse.
Yeah.
Okay. And she flourished there too, so it was very good of her.
Mm-hmm.
We got friends. We were friends and got friendlier as the years went on, until it got to a point where she was the only woman I could think of being my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I hope she felt the same way about me.
Well, she stuck with you for 60 years, so...
She must have liked me a little bit.
Just a little bit. Yeah. So do you remember the time that you proposed to her?
Oh, not exactly. They were living on Catherine Street.
482, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So it was probably a Saturday night, probably after maybe we'd been into the teenage dance. There was a teenage dance every Saturday, and I'd walk her home, and probably I got to a point that I wanted her for my wife, the mother of my kids. Yeah. And I was just hoping that she felt the same way about me.
So were you nervous when you proposed?
Probably. But we were pretty close, so I don't think it was a big surprise to her.
Mm-hmm. You were in the workforce at that time when you proposed?
I think so, yes. I was working for Auto Service and Supply. I worked for National Auto Supply for a few months. That's my first job, other than delivering papers and things like that. And I went to work for Auto Service or National Auto Supply. And then there was, at one time, a couple of the workers who were older than I was approached me and told me that they were going to leave and start their own company, and wondered if I wanted to come with them. And there was Dave McKee was a senior in a machine shop, so he came to work there. And when they told me that he was coming, I didn't hesitate to come with him. So I started off as a apprentice, you might say, and did all the dirty jobs.
Well, that's what apprenticeship is all about.
Yeah. And then finally, I don't know how it happened, but Dave got tired of talking to customers. And by that time, he had taught me quite a bit, and I was able to take over the shop. And Dave stayed on until he reached 65 or whatever, and he retired. And then I had to hire one or two others as the business grew, as the years went by. And we ended with about 4 or 5 in the shop.
So was he your mentor then?
Was he a what?
A mentor to you?
Dave McKee was my mentor. Yeah. She's taught me how to rebore, and then we got other machiners in, like crankshaft grinding, and salesmen or somebody from the company would come and teach me how to use the machines. And then I would teach some of my shop guys. I couldn't be answering the phone and doing that all. Eventually, I had about 6 or 7 guys working for me, so I was busy on the phone most of the time. And sometimes I had to go out to see customers and see what their problems were, and then I'd send the proper guy out to help them fix it. In those days, they did more work on the car engines were much, how would you put it? You could work on them. There was room under the hood for it to take the pan off and the heads off, and then somebody from my shop or myself, we'd go out and measure things up for them and advise them whether they should rebuild the whole engine, or if they just had one little problem with the engine, we'd send somebody out to fix that part. And one of the jobs was grinding the crankshaft journal in the car. If it was just one journal that was giving them trouble, we could round it up again for them with our journal grinder. But that worked out pretty well at first, but then we had a series of cars falling on my place. And once a car fell on you, they just didn't want to go on. They said, "I'm sorry, Bob, but I can't do that anymore." And then it got down to I was the only one left to do that. So, and I couldn't do it during the daytime because I was running the shop. So I had to go to the garage at night and do the work there. And then they would pay me. It didn't go through the shop.
Okay.
So that gave me some spending money so that I could treat Mom and the kids. I don't know how many of the kids would remember going to Stony Creek Dairy.
No, they all remember.
They all remember that. That was a favorite thing for them. Once I got finished and got paid, then we'd have a trip to Stony Creek Dairy. Became a family tradition, you might say.
That was the one that was actually in Stony Creek, right?
Yeah, it was in Stony Creek, the original Stony Creek Dairy. It was one of the busiest places you could think of. And then I don't know why, but they closed up. And
well, it was bought by Nestle, I think. Or...
Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but I have nothing but pleasant memories of going to Stony Creek Dairy. And Michael was the one that could. They made ice cream cones, and you could have a single dip on top, like a scoopful.
Yeah.
Or you could, if you were a little bit older, you could have 2 dips on it. And then we had Michael, who would put away 3 dips. I can remember that vividly.
He must have been a teenager at that time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was a teenager, of course.
So did you have a favorite ice cream flavor there, or a couple?
I think there was a few. They had so many different flavors. There was a cherry vanilla, which I liked pretty much, as I can remember. But they had a whole list of their flavors. You could get whatever you wanted. You could get a single dip, you could get a double dip, and you could get a triple dip. Michael would go for the triple dips. And today that helps him grow to be 6 feet or more.
So you were at Grace United. Now I understand that burned down, didn't it? Do you recall what happened there?
The church eventually burned down, but we left after Michael was born, and we were living in an apartment at Emerald and Stinson, I think it was, in the lower city, and attending Grace United. But then when we moved to the mountain, Elsie got a job at a construction place. She got fired from Westinghouse when...
She had the audacity of getting pregnant.
Yeah, if you were married, or you couldn't work for Westinghouse anymore.
If you were married? Mm-hmm. Oh, not if you were. I thought it was she got pregnant and she had to quit.
Maybe it was a pregnancy. Yeah, it probably was a pregnancy. So. You're correct. Yeah, when she got pregnant, she had to leave there. So when she got back, when she got over the birth and everything was going well, she started another job, and she eventually worked for a construction firm, and that's how we think. And what else did we do? Oh, back at Grace United, when we were teenagers, we put on a variety show every year. And
yeah, I've seen pictures of those. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a fun time. Did you ever meet Dave Dwyer?
Yes.
Did you?
Yeah, he took some.
You know
pictures.
how short he was.
Well, don't know if he was that short, but he's
Okay.
maybe shorter than you. But yes.
Well, my brother Jimmy, he was
taller.
Big, and one of the plays that we put on, there was a skit where they came out in their wrestling shorts, like bathing suits, and Dave Dwyer wrestled Jimmy and beat him.
But that was part of the play?
That was part of the play.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the audience cheered.
For the underdog.
Yeah, I don't know who did most of the writing. I think George Johnson was one of the Ben's
father.
Ben's brother.
Oh, brother.
Older brother George. He ended up as a teacher, and he was a very smart fella, and I think he did a lot of the scripts, and we all put in our 2 cents worth, you might say.
Mm-hmm. So, what else do you remember about Burkholder?
About Burkholder?
Because they've got a graveyard there and everything, so it's been on the mountain for a while. I would
the
take
church
it.
is in the middle.
Yeah. There's
a graveyard on each side of it. The Burkholders were, I guess, one of the most interesting people was Mabel Burkholder. She did a column for the Spectator, and she was one of the members of a church, and she was old and heavy. I don't think she ever married, but we got along well with it. Everybody got along with Mabel. And then actually, she ended up calling her Aunt Mabel. All you had to do was say Aunt Mabel at Burkholder, and they knew exactly who you were talking about. Yeah. She was one of the patriarchs. And then I'm trying to think, there was a younger fella that was connected, and he's the one that put the porch on at the back.
Okay.
Him and his he had a couple of sons, I think, that were helpers for him, and he was thinking of getting into the building trade. So I said, well, if you want to get some experience, I need a porch on the back. And
so this is by the back door, like before the addition went on, or?
No, he did the addition.
Oh, he did the addition.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Very, very smart guy. But I lost track of him now. I forget, he went into some type of business, I think. But my memory's not that great.
Well, it's pretty good so far.
So
You're recalling a lot of good details.
We've had a lot of good friends, and interesting friends. And Elsie got involved with the women's group, and then when they needed a secretary over there, she got hired to do that. So it wasn't big pay, but it put some bread on the table. Every little bit counted in those days.
Well, then she eventually went to Overhead Crane. Was that from
She went to the real estate place first.
after Burkholder?
After Burkholder, yeah.
Okay.
And then Overhead Crane that's where she ended up, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Something was going on that I had to miss her going away party,
Her
part of it
retirement.
anyway.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, they treated her very well there. And it wasn't too much longer that Overhead Crane was, I'm trying to think of any idea where they were?
Well, I think they were in Stony Creek, weren't they? Or
Was it Stony Creek? Could have been.
I'd never been there,
But anyway, they had a branch up in Sudbury.
oh yes.
And we got to, when Elsie was retiring, I think the guy's name was Wed. He came all the way, him and his wife came all the way down from
Sudbury.
Sudbury. And I think they really liked
Dealing with her.
Yeah.
Well, who
Most of
didn't
them.
like her?
There was some that were jealous of her.
Oh, okay. Well, that's true.
There's always that thing you got to deal with. But we didn't worry about them. The bosses liked her. They did the interview when she applied for the job. And of course, she had to say how much she wanted. And she said the two owners, it was a husband and wife, were interviewing her. And I don't know whether the husband or the wife's, the one question was, how much of a salary would you expect? And Mom told them what she wanted. And they talked to themselves over a little bit. And the husband came back and said, well, we'd like to give you the job, but you're asking just a little bit too much. And Mom just said, don't worry about that. You'll know that I'm worth it once you get me going. I'm not sure what word she used, but I wasn't there, of course.
Supremely confident.
She knew what she was worth, and she was asking it. And then they had a little conference between the two of them. And it wasn't too long that, I don't know if I ever told you or you ever heard about the husband got a letter from a group of, I don't know how it was worded or anything, but they wanted to give him a car, a Jeep. And all I had to do was pay for the, I forget how much it was, but what were cars worth in those days?
What, back in the 80s?
Oh, yeah, way back.
Yeah, so in the 80s, well, they'd be at 15 to 30,000. So he had to pay the shipping or the transportation costs or something?
They asked her to pay the taxes on it or something. And the guy come up to Elsie and to Mom and said, write me out a check for this. And Mom says, not until you talk to somebody else. And I guess she wasn't supposed to talk back to the owner, but she was very suspicious of anybody giving. And I think Mom asked, do you remember putting in for that? And he said, no, I don't actually, but I contribute to so many things that it's just one of these things. So she said, well, they had a, what would you call a guy that comes and checks your books and things like that?
An auditor?
An auditor. So Elsie said, call your auditor and tell him what you're going to do. And then if he tells me to write out a check, I'll write out a check. So he called the auditor, and the auditor says, listen to Elsie, will you? You've got somebody there that cares about the company. Listen to her. I'll be right over. And he came over and showed him that it was just a scam.
Yeah.
You'll never see the Jeep. You'll pay the $300 or $400 that they wanted, and you'll never see the Jeep. So she saved the company some money, and that was in her first year. Like she was, I don't think she'd been there a year yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they never thought of. They weren't sorry that they hired her. Yeah. In fact, when Elsie died, they were at the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
They said that she was the best worker that they ever hired. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're quite pleased with her work. They were good bosses, and they treated her good, and she treated them good.
And Frank Grenville worked there, right?
Oh yeah, I forget. Where did he end up? He was a salesman or something. Wasn't he?
I don't know what he did there, but
Yeah, the name is very familiar.
yeah, Frank and Wendy.
Frank and Wendy. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're big people.
Yeah. Their son Matthew passed away, unfortunately.
Who did?
Matthew, their son.
Did he die?
Yeah, he passed away, unfortunately.
Oh my God.
He had, I think it was cancer,
Yeah.
but yeah, they were at Elsie's funeral as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were good friends.
I used to take them up to the cottage.
Probably.
Yeah, there were pictures of Frank in his underwear doing something.
That's Frank.
So.
Yeah. Over the years, we've had some pretty good friends and neighbors. The girls here, they used to live down the street a ways. And I don't know what's happened.
Didn't their father live in that house?
Yeah, but the father and mother moved from there over to Kenworth somewhere, I believe. And then, how the heck did this happen?
Could they have moved into a retirement home, or no?
No, the mother and father, I think, split up.
Oh.
So then the father came, he was a veteran of the war, and he had an injury, like, from the war. So when the father and the stepmother broke up, then evidently the mother owned the house, and the father was just living with her, like. So the father, they had to find a place for the father, and it was the house there didn't have as many rooms, so they bought this house over here. The three girls, they never married, but they all have had good jobs. I think they're very smart people. They're not dummies. So they bought the house, and they've done several renovations to it. But the young fellow that owned it originally, he put the addition on the top, but I think he did a lot of work just himself. So in the last couple of years, they've had to do all the insulation had to come out and be replaced with good stuff.
Yeah.
And they're all three working, so I would imagine they're, money-wise, it's not too bad. The dad eventually passed away, but he used to stand by those two garage doors and he'd be in his, I don't know whether he had a part of his uniform on or what, but anyway, I used to go over and chat with him for, a half an hour or so after I got home from work and had my supper and all that. Or if it was on the weekend, maybe when he was out. So the dad and I got to be good friends, very good friends. And the girls have been very good friends.
Yeah, well, you've got a lot of good neighbors around here.
Hmm?
You've got a lot of good neighbors around here.
Yeah, Carol next door has been good. And the lady and mother and father that was there before, they had a boy or something. Seems to me they had somebody next door that was about the same age as some of our kids. I don't know. Michael or Margaret might know more.
And so, what's
Sally
Carol's
would-
last name?
Pardon?
What's Carol's last name?
Oh gosh,
Ingersia or Tapuska?
what is it?
Ingersia or Tapuska?
No, Ingersias are the ones behind.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Carol, you got me on her last name.
Okay.
If I hear it, I know what I think. But anyway, we've had pretty good neighbors. And Jack Steddick, that was in the house on the corner
Yeah.
when we moved in, he became a pretty good friend. He loved my garage.
Oh, because of the maple leaf?
the variety of things that he could find in there.
Oh. Yes, you have quite an eclectic
Yeah,
mixture of tools there.
yeah. He knew he could borrow anything he wanted. Like, we were that friendly that he could come over when he wanted and borrow whatever he wanted. I'd always get it back. And then eventually, I don't know who had bought it, but there was just the one snowblower. We had one, a cheaper one, and it gave up the ghost. And I don't know who was across the road at the time. But anyway, the three of us pitched in for a brand new snowblower, and then the one, I think it was Jack Steddick on the corner, he used to plow the sidewalks and the driveways, and then whoever was living there would finish it off. Like, he'd do the driveway, but he might not do the sidewalk in front, and then I'd get to shovel that when I got home from work. So it made a big difference. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't mind paying for that snowblower. That worked out well. And eventually the girls gave it to I think the snowblower's still working. And the fellow on the corner, he works it now, the new guy.
Yeah.
He's not really new, but
The new guy.
he's not Jack Steddick.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack lost his wife, I think, and then he finally gave up and sold the house. Yeah, we've had really good people. Yeah.
All right. So what was it like growing up in Hamilton back in the 30s and 40s?
Well, there wasn't any money around. It was during the Depression, so people were pretty tight as far as money goes. But we had the bathing beach in the summertime, and we had the bay that would freeze over nicely in the winter, and we could go skating. We'd make a rink for playing hockey, and then when we got that all chewed up, then we'd move a little bit further out into the bay. And I guess by the time spring came, we probably moved about 3 or 4 times.
Did you have nets, or did you just put jackets
No,
down,
no.
or?
nothing that cost money. Like there was no money around, so we just had a couple rocks maybe to be the goals.
And you had a real puck and
Yeah, we have a puck and a stick.
and sticks.
That part. That was usually my Christmas present at winter time, was a hockey stick.
So did you play a lot of road hockey in the summer or in
a
the spring?
little bit of road hockey, yes. Where we lived on Wentworth Street, there was very low traffic. People would come down to Land Street and turn off onto Land, but there was only the three or four houses and then the boat houses at the foot of Wentworth Street, so there wasn't a real lot of traffic. So I can't recall of anybody getting hurt. And there was a lack of cars too. People couldn't afford cars.
Yeah.
So there would only be about 3 or 4 cars in the neighborhood.
So if you had a position to play in hockey, what was it? What was your favorite position?
Well, any part of the forward line, from center, left wing, and right wing.
Okay, so you're forward. Okay.
Defense. We weren't really organized, so we weren't. We just went as far as we could go and fast as we could go.
Your best defense was a good offense.
Yeah.
So you use skates. You use skates in the wintertime on the ice.
Would I skate?
But like you used hockey skates when you were playing on the bay.
Not on the road. No.
No. When you were on the rink, like when you were on the ice in the wintertime.
Yeah, we have skates.
Okay.
Yeah. They were usually hand-me-downs. Like I had 2 older brothers, so there was always a pair of skates that would be handed to me, and then I'd hand them down to my younger brother.
So there's a picture of you with your elementary school team. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Well, we did pretty well. We got to the final, but we were no match for the East End. Had a very powerful team that made us look like amateurs, so to speak. But it was fun. It was fun.
So did you played against other schools
Yes.
after school, or?
Yes, yeah. It was a tournament, and we beat out the best thing we did. We beat Bonetto School, which had a lot more people, but we were able to somehow. I gave the credit to Harry Sawchuk, who was our goalie. And
Any relation to Terry?
Harry, I don't know.
No, Terry Sawchuk played for the Leafs.
Does he? Yeah, I never thought of that. I might not be getting his name correct too. So.
No. So the uniforms were the school supplied the jerseys and the players supplied everything else?
On loan, yeah. The sweaters would be loaned to you.
Yeah.
You didn't keep them at
No,
the
no.
end of the year.
No.
No.
That's typical of high schools and other schools.
Well, during the Depression, things were tight.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't think people today would have made it through the Depression, but that's just a thought.
We've got a pandemic to go through instead. So did you have lots of practices? Like, how long was the season? Did you start in November and you went through till March, or?
I can't remember exactly, but I would think it would be less than that long. You'd play maybe 4 or 5 games, and then you get down as long as you kept winning, you kept playing. But once you lost, you were done.
Okay. Did you play any other school sports? Like, you have an avid interest in football.
No, I don't think so. Hockey was the only thing I played. Yeah.
Okay.
They may have had baseball and stuff like that, but
No, you didn't play basketball or volleyball or anything
basketball, I never knew about basketball until I went to high school.
like that? No,
And I didn't play any sports in high school, though. I don't think we had a hockey team. I can't recall.
may not be. So, what else do you remember about growing up in the Depression?
You were always hungry,
True.
and that, well, you just did what you had to do. Everybody was in the same boat, so you didn't feel depressed or anything.
No.
And as kids, I think it was more a problem with the parents than the kids. All we needed was, in the summer, was a ball and a bat, and somebody would come up with that.
So you typically were out a lot of the day, like when you went to school, and then what did you do after school?
Well, most of the time you had a small job like delivering papers.
Okay.
That would take you up until supper time. And at supper you might, especially in the winter, it got dark pretty fast, so you stayed home.
Did your homework?
In the spring and fall, it's a different story. You could go out and have some fun after supper. Get out of the parents' way. They didn't seem to mind you going out.
There probably wasn't organized sports like there is now.
No.
So you made your own fun?
No, there weren't. I think there was one time we did have a bit of an organized sport, baseball, softball, like we called it. And we had several teams, and there was companies that would sponsor the players. And you got the sweater to wear with their name on it, but you didn't keep the sweater. You turned it back in.
Right.
At the end of the season, or when your team finally got beat out or whatever. It was tight, but it was fun. Everybody was in the same boat. That was, you couldn't complain about being poor because everybody was on the...
You weren't going to get any sympathy from anybody else.
No, sympathy was hard to find in those days. But I wouldn't trade it.
So
you got through it, and I think it toughened you up a little bit.
So by the time you were in your teenage years, the war was on.
Yes.
What do you remember about that?
Yes, my one brother was able to get overseas, and that's where he met his wife, actually.
Which brother was that?
David.
David. Okay.
David and Pam. Pam was from the southern part of England somewhere.
Do you remember?
My mother was from England too. So.
Right. Do you remember what his job was in the army, or in the?
No, I'm not sure. I don't think he got into any fighting. So.
Okay.
He might have even been in the Air Force.
In the Air Force, yeah.
Yeah. My other brother, Edward, he couldn't pass the physical. His eyes were bad, something like mine when I was a kid. My eyes are better now than they were when I was a kid, for some reason. My eye, I should say now.
Yeah. But, well, you did have the lens replaced when you had the cataract surgery, I think.
I'm not sure what I had done. Could be.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think something like that.
So did you have any hobbies that you?
I collected stamps.
How did you get into stamp collecting?
I don't know. That was just a thing to do in those days, be a stamp collector.
So did you start as a teenager, or do you remember when you started?
Oh, I would think around 10 or
11.
10 or 11, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And I don't know what got me on stamps, but
They were free
Yeah.
once they were done.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Okay, so what did your parents do for a living? Like, what did your dad do?
My mother was just a housewife,
Right.
and my father worked at Firestone Tire and Rubber. And he worked 5 days a week and half a day on Saturday, I think it was.
So was he making the tires? Like he was on the production line, or was he something?
I think he worked in the cure room,
Okay.
but I never went to the factory at all. So I assumed that was part of the making of tires. You had to cure the rubber somehow.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was his job. And it seemed to me he was putting tires in molds, like, and then and one time I think these molds were supported by two chains, like, and then they were lowered down to form the tire, sort of. And I think one time one chain broke or something. And that's I can't be sure of that, but it's something happened that
He got hurt.
he got hurt. Yeah, but once he got better, he was back on the job, and it wasn't the end of the world for us.
Yeah. So do you remember how long he worked at Firestone? Like, was it 40 years or?
Oh gosh, I'm pretty sure he got at least a 25-year pin. He was in the Army in the war, so he couldn't be working there then.
No.
It was after the war, when they were repatriated, that he came back to Nova Scotia and continued his tree cutting. And the tree cutting took him through the Maritimes, and I don't know about Quebec, whether they were allowed to cut anything there. And then he ended up anyway in Ontario, and it was a Sudbury area. Sturgeon Falls name comes to, but I'm not sure if that's where it was that he was stationed, and they were cutting in that area when he heard about jobs being available in Hamilton in industry. So I guess he thought he'd give that a try, and the rest is history. We ended up in Hamilton.
Okay, so.
But all his family was still in Nova Scotia.
But you were born in Hamilton, weren't you?
I think I was born in Hamilton.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
pretty sure.
so he
Yeah, I was born at my grandfather's house at Burlington and John Street. My grandfather and grandmother had a house there, right on the corner.
Oh, okay.
And that's where I was born.
But being in the, but he did he live in England for a period of time and he came over? Did your father live in England for a period of time and he came over?
No, he was just stationed there.
Just stationed there. Okay.
But he was a sergeant major, I think, and he had some responsibility to the wounded veterans that were brought over from France, like
Okay.
in a hospital ship.
Okay.
And then he had to get them into a hospital in England and do whatever he could to notify their relatives or how they were doing, and that. It was a pretty rough time, that First World War, I think.
So, so he came back to Nova Scotia, and he changed the spelling of your last name before he went into the war or afterwards?
I'm not sure where he changed the name a little bit, didn't he?
Yeah, he changed it from Reiser to Reiser.
Yeah. I'm not sure why he did that, though I'm sure there was a reason.
Well, Sally said that it was to make your little less German look, the name being a little less
that
German.
Sounds like
Yeah.
that's quite possible, yeah. There's still, the rest of it are still in Nova Scotia. I have a fair amount of relatives there that I've never seen, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, did you have any other hobbies besides stamp collecting? Because you just gave up stamp collecting like in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't even know what happened to my...
No, you sold them off. You had a whole collection and you sold it to a collector or a store or something, and they bought it from you or something.
Well, I'm glad somebody got it. You lose track of things.
So, so you were born in Hamilton, raised in Hamilton. What was it like? You had 7 brothers. There were 7 of you, right? 7 brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
So, what was it like living in such a large family?
Well, you get used to it. It was always nice to have an older brother for protection, sort of. But no, it was a big family, but we ate well, but there was no ice cream, a lot of ice cream and stuff like that. No.
Yeah.
And one thing that Firestone, where my dad worked, they had a picnic every year. And usually at the picnic there was ice cream and stuff like that given. And the big thing for us was Port Dalhousie. Do you know where?
Yes.
You heard of that? That's closer to Niagara Falls, eh?
Right.
Yeah. So we would get in a boat at the foot of Wentworth Street, where we lived practically. We would get into this boat and have a boat trip to Port Dalhousie, and then we would get off and have our picnic, and then you get back on the boat afterwards, after supper, and bring you back.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a highlight, I guess, of our year, like getting that boat ride to Port Dalhousie. It was something we always looked forward to. And there was always something on the boat that they were giving out. And Dad liked working at Firestone, I guess. He stayed there for quite a while. So every summer we would have that. And what was the other thing about it? Oh, I think someplace there was a picnic, and there was a prize for the most people from the one family, like.
Or factory or from family. Oh, okay.
Yeah, like the families would go, and if we had 7 kids, so we usually had a fair.
No, you had 9 people going.
We were up in the top 10. I don't. Oh, maybe that was the church picnic more off that we ran into the Washington family and became pretty good friends with them. That was a black family that went to our church for a while. And they were the neatest people you'd want to see. They made the white families look kind of slovenly, but they would march into church. I think there was close to 15 kids.
Wow.
It was a big family. And I guess the older ones would look after getting the younger ones ready. I'm sure the mom and dad couldn't handle them all. They must have had a lot of help, but it was amazing to see them come into church, and they just looked like they stepped out of a magazine. They were so neat and clean and beautiful. But unfortunately, I don't know whether people made fun of them or anything. I don't think so. I think most people respected them quite much. But eventually they left our church and went to work with someone else. The only good thing about it is when the church had a picnic, we were elevated to number 1. We were number 2 for so many years. But when the Washingtons left, then we became the most people that would show up at a picnic.
So tell me a bit about what it was like growing up with Aunt Margie.
With who?
With Margie, how was it? What was it? What was it like growing up with Aunt Margie? Margie, Sheeny.
She was the youngest
Yeah.
daughter.
So, what? Do you have any fun stories to tell about her?
No, I can't think of anything offhand. No, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Do you have any fun stories about any of your brothers or sisters?
Oh, probably. Well, Ed was a good worker, and David was a little different. He didn't make too many friends in our immediate area. He gravitated to, I don't know where he met, they were East End people mostly, but very, very nice people. But that was the only thing that was a little different. My oldest sister, Lil, she married, and they moved around a little bit and ended up in the Sudbury area. So once or twice in the summer, we would take a drive up to Sudbury to see my sister. Usually stay overnight and come back and the next day or two. And that was always something to look forward to. And we would. They had a beautiful bathing beach up in Sudbury there. We always remembered to take our bathing suits, so we'd have to spend some time at the beach.
So the roads wouldn't have been like the 401 or the 400 or anything like that. They would have been more.
No, it was just number 11 up to Sudbury. Number 11 up to North Bay. And then, I'm not sure of the number, but there went
you had
another main highway you take over to Sudbury. So.
They were just 2-lane highways though, right?
Yeah, mostly 2-lane highways.
Yeah.
I don't recall having any trouble with the vehicles.
So did all 9 of you go up all at the same time, or?
Oh, I don't think so. No.
Because that would have been an adventure.
Yeah, no, we'd never fit in the car, so it's usually my brother Dave and my mom and dad. I don't know if any of the girls went with us. I can't recall any of the girls going up. But oddly enough, my sister Lil, she ended up there after she was married, and her husband had to go up there for work, so she lived up there for a while. So we would go up and visit her just once in the summertime.
But then did she end up in Thunder Bay or North Bay, or where did she end up?
I don't know. She moved around quite a bit. Okay. I didn't see too much. She was kind of my favorite, but I didn't see her that much. So, and then I had a younger sister, Margie, and that she became my favorite after that. Yeah, it was a big family, but there were bigger ones.
Oh yeah.
I had a picture of the Washington family somewhere around this house, but I just haven't been able to put my fingers on it. But that was the black family that went to our church in Washington.
I'll have. I don't recall seeing that, but I'll keep my eye open for it.
No, it's tucked away somewhere, and I just don't know where I put it.
Okay, well, if we come across it, at least we know who these people would be then.
Yes.
David got it. David, whenever I saw David, he had his camera with him. When did he get? Do you remember when he got involved in photography? Like, was that in the 60s or 70s, or?
No, I'm not sure. We were a family, but we were kind of individuals. Like, we each had our likes and dislikes, I think. So
Mhm.
we didn't gravitate to, like, we were friendly with everybody, but we didn't. We had friends that were more of our heroes, or sort of, you might say.
So Clarice was older than you, right?
Clarice is older.
Yeah.
Edward was older. David was older, and Lillian was older. Yeah.
Okay, so what do you remember about Clarice growing up?
Well, she married and lived in Hamilton for quite a while, and her husband worked at different jobs in the area, and then he got
Up to Atomic Energy.
yeah, that was up north, wasn't it?
Yeah, in
Near Sudbury,
yeah,
or
no, near Pembroke.
Pembroke, rather.
Right. So I think he
Yeah.
was in Petawawa
Oh, okay.
or Chalk River.
Oh,
Chalk
that's
River.
more Ottawa, were you?
Yeah, Chalk River.
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah, that's right. You forget all these things until you get reminded of them.
Not a problem. So did you go up to Pembroke a fair bit once they moved up
we,
there?
We would try to make at least one trip in the summertime, yeah. Encourage them to come down if they could make it, but
So I've heard the story about Sally being put under the table by Nancy, and do you recall that story? Like what?
yeah, that was something else. The first house they had was somewhere around Pembroke, right? It wasn't right in Pembroke. And there was, I don't know how many kids they had, and we went up with Michael and me and Margaret and Mom and Dad, I think. So we had a pretty good, much of a household, houseful, I should say. And the time we were had got time to leave, and we were looking for Margaret
Or Sally?
or Sally. I guess, yeah, it was Sally. And they had hidden her under the table.
So was it Clarice that had hidden her, or was it Nancy?
No, it was,
or was it Nancy?
Was Nancy and the family, the girls. They wanted to keep her.
They wanted to keep her. Well,
So you almost lost out, Mike.
well I'm sure you would have missed.
Yeah,
You would.
it
was just
the
a joke.
parents wouldn't have
Yeah,
let
no,
us
it
go
was just a
without her,
joke.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, but Sally was very likable, and the kids liked her.
They didn't obviously cry too much about it to give her position away either.
Yeah, it was a pretty nice family. Like everybody, I think, seemed to get along pretty well. I can't remember any bad things, but of course the parents wouldn't tell us about any bad things. So we survived and grew up, and I can't think of any outing like that family had, where one person wouldn't talk to another or something like that. We were all researched, and one for one and one for all. Yeah.
So the Reiser family picnic started up like over 30 years ago. Do you remember how that got started? Like whose idea was it, and what involvement did you have in that?
Well, we were all involved in them.
Was it Margie's idea, or do you remember whose idea it
I
was?
can't. I wouldn't be 100% sure who started it. Sounds like something Margie would instigate. Yeah.
Well, and it is in Dundas, so.
Yeah. Yeah. So they usually was at Dundas Driving Park, and we'd rent. Margie would rent the area for the afternoon or whatever day it was. Usually it was a Saturday afternoon. And it was well attended, and they took turns doing the program, like, and running the races, and you were in charge. And
Yeah.
next year it will be somebody else. So it worked out pretty well. But
Well, hopefully in 2022 we can get it back started up again. Hopefully the pandemic will be behind us.
I wouldn't be surprised if it did, but it might be a little different. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
The one thing that we talk about, the Firestone picnic.
you did. You talked about
Yeah.
the ships
Yeah,
going.
that kind of made us picnic people, you might say.
Okay.
So if somebody wanted to start a picnic, we were first ones to volunteer. Like, everybody liked having a picnic and getting together.
Well, you seem to like Port Dover as well. So how did that get started with the hot dogs?
That seems like my dad went there for some reason, and he liked it so much that we just kind of fell in love with it. It was a favorite spot. Oh, maybe the Firestone might have had no, the Firestone just stayed on Lake Ontario. I have to give that one some thought, Mike. But
Okay.
there is a connection between Port Dover and our family, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if somebody lived there for a little while or not. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
As the kids married, and they didn't have to stay in Hamilton. They were free to go wherever mostly it was wherever they could find work.
Right.
But sometimes it would be if they'd been to a place and they liked it so much, then next year they'd have everybody in, say, to Port Dover. And once you've been to Port Dover, you kind of fall in love with it. So it kind of hit the spot. So
Well,
that was our favorite place.
well, speaking of, one of your other favorite places though was Hutch's. So
Hutch's on the beach.
so what was that like? And how did you get started eating there?
Well, would you believe that Mom and I used to walk to Hutch's?
From downtown, or
From the north end, like
I guess
is Sally there?
I don't know. Oh yeah, she got it.
Yes, Hutch's became a kind of a favorite. One thing I did, there was a certain job that my other workers at the place, they wouldn't do it. They had cars fall on them, and once a car falls on you,
Yeah, we talked about that the last time. So
you can understand.
yeah,
Never happened to me.
thankfully.
I was extra careful because I knew it had happened to other people. So I would always hook the machines up, and I'd have a switch away from the car, and I'd just turn it on and let the thing run by itself. And if the car didn't fall down, then I knew I would be kind of safe if I went under there. So, but I had to do that at night because I was foreman during the day. I was in charge of the whole shop, so I couldn't do any of that. I couldn't leave the shop unless, just for half an hour or 20 minutes if somebody had a problem, and I'd have to go and see if we could help them out. But I couldn't go for 3 or 4 hours that it took to grind a journal. So I had to do the work at night or on the weekends.
So when you did you go down to Hutch's to eat after you were finished, or
After I got paid.
after you got paid?
Yeah,
Okay.
after I had, sometimes I could do the job all in one night. Sometimes I'd have to go back a second time to finish it off. Because part of the problem was that the places I was working, there was no lights. You were working in a backyard or something. So once it got dark, you couldn't stay. You had to go home.
Yeah.
So sometimes it would take me 2 or 3 nights to finish the job. So. But once we got paid, we usually end up at Hutch's. And Michael, I think, was the one that liked that.
But you said that you walked down there with Elsie to the beach and Hutch's.
Yeah. And when we were teenagers, we'd walk from her house down to Hutch's. Yeah.
What was your favorite meal at that time?
Oh, I guess it was a hot dog of some kind. I don't know, just being there was... No, I think we gravitated more to hamburgers than hot dogs. But,
yeah, because you liked Port Dover for the hot dogs, but you liked Hutch's for the hamburgers and the fish and chips.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once we got driving and started a family, of course, it was a little different. There wouldn't be as much walking. It would be driving wherever we could. It started off, as I got working, I got use of the company's trucks and things like that. So quite often we stick 2 kids in the back and this younger one in the front with us, and away we go.
So Sally used to talk about the Dodge Dart that you had and how she would sit on the hump where the transmission was when she was.
What did she do?
There was a hump in the car with the transmission. That was her spot to sit or something.
That was her seat, wasn't it?
Yes. So do you remember anything about your the Dodge Dart or any of the other cars you drove?
Oh, the only one I remember was I only had one new car in my life, and it was a Ford, and it lasted me about 2 months or something, and it's had more time in the garage than in my possession, and it cured me of buying any Ford products. So I stuck with mostly with the kind I've got now.
You have a Toyotas.
Toyota, yeah.
I think you had a Datsun truck at one time.
A what? A truck?
A Datsun, which is now Nissan.
Yeah, we had a Datsun truck. You're bringing back memories, Mike. Yeah, I don't know why I got that.
Well, I think you found it handy taking stuff up to the cottage.
Yes, I'm sure we did. Yeah, we could, like the older children didn't go to the cottages as much as Sally did.
Yeah.
Because she was the youngest one and she wasn't working, the other ones could stay at home and look after themselves.
So it was '69 that you decided to buy a cottage. What was the motivation for buying a cottage, and how did you end up in Round Lake?
Something about maybe Johnson's had a cottage, and we might have been up there and liked it so much that we decided that we were going to do something. So the next year or two, I don't know how long, but we were saving up for it, and I had this money sitting in the bank. It was somewhere between $6,000 and $7,000. So we set that as our limit that we would pay for the cottage. And
So
we went up there, and the only reason we got it, I think, was because we were going to give them that much money in one lump sum. There were other offers on the cottage, but they were more money, but all they wanted, they would put a down payment. And this couple were breaking up. They wanted it over and done with right away.
yeah.
So we got the cottage, and I think it was the man and wife that were separating,
Yeah.
and the man got 1 cent less than the lady. Yeah, it didn't come out even, so the lady got the extra penny.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was in the 7,000 area,
Yeah.
what we had.
But did you buy it sight unseen, or did you actually go into the cottage at one point?
I think we saw it from the outside. I don't think we got inside at all.
Okay.
But it seemed like a fair amount of land. And, well, the cottage was there. Once we got there, and got to open the door and then started to see the grass growing up through the kitchen floor. We knew we had to do something in a hurry. Mom was a little bit disappointed, I think, with it. But anyway, Sally liked it, and I liked it. And we soon got that kitchen floor covered up. That was one of the first things we did.
Yeah.
And then we had to put some heat in, and because he did, there was some cold weather sometimes, but you needed a bit of a fire just to take the frost off them.
Yeah.
But the rest is history, you might say.
So in those first couple of years, how many times did you go up 10 times a year, or do you remember how many? Because you would have had a lot of work to do, and
Yeah.
and that was like a 4-hour drive for you, wasn't it? From Hamilton?
Like 2 hours up and 2 hours back.
No, like 4 hours up and 4 hours back, wasn't it?
No, I don't think so.
Because it's 3 hours. It's 3 hours for us on major highways to go up there,
Is it?
and then it's another 45 minutes by a major highway to get to Hamilton. So I would have thought it would have been between 3 and 4 hours
I
one
don't
way to
know.
go up there.
We didn't really think about it that way. We just thought we were going to the cottage and everybody wanted to go.
Well, gas was pretty cheap then too, but
Yeah.
those were mostly work weekends though, right? In the first few years while you were getting things.
We were doing a lot of work up there, yeah.
Yeah. So was it primarily you and Michael doing, the renovations?
I don't know if Michael was too involved. Must have been. It seemed like they were all involved. The first thing we had to get up there was an outhouse, because the girls didn't like going doing their business in the bushes like
Yeah.
understandably so. So I remember the one. What I did, there was kind of a store that's like supplied
A lumber
wood.
store, yeah.
Yeah, all your hardware stuff on Parkdale Avenue. I forget the name of the place now, but anyway, I was in there, and they were taking a display thing down, and it was a display of different doors, so it was like a square.
Yeah.
So I looked at it, and I said, I wonder if they want to get rid of that. That would make a lovely outhouse to begin with anyway, because it was nice and square and it was well built. And I talked to the guy in charge, and he said, yeah, we're getting rid of it. If you want it, it's so much, it's yours. So I said, sold. So we bought that and put it on the back of our truck, and I did some work on it to make it look more like an outhouse. And then we put it on top of the car or whatever we were driving at the time, and drove all the way up north, and we got honked at so many times. I guess they knew what it was, where we were going.
Yeah.
Didn't take people long to guess.
So since you brought up the topic of outhouses, the Taj Mahal, can you tell me the story about the Taj Mahal? Because I don't think Elsie actually knew how much you spent on that all cedar fixture.
Yeah, I guess that was part of it, that putting the seat in and all that stuff. I did that down here before we took it up, of course.
Yeah.
So I guess it was a little bit of spending money was spent on it.
Do you remember how much you spent on it?
I'd be lying. I'd just be a guess.
Oh, okay. Because Mom never knew, and it was always a source of mystery.
Oh. Oh. Well, I guess at that time, I just wanted to get some place for the ladies to, a little bit more private,
Yeah.
going in the bushes. So, but we sure got honked at a lot going with that thing on top of the car.
Yeah.
Must have been a pretty sight. But the rest is history, eh?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So what? There was always was. Did you ever just? Did you ever get to a point where it? You didn't have to do much, and you could actually enjoy it, as opposed to.
No, it was. It was just a case of getting it kind of set up and that we could live in, and bedrooms, like the walls were still open, I think, most of them.
Yeah.
So we kind of covered things up, so we had a couple bedroom, ended up with 3 bedrooms, and that worked out pretty well for us. But it was quite an adventure. Work in progress, is that what they call it?
Yes.
I couldn't go up there. I didn't have to think too much to
What to
think
do
of
next?
enough of things that I would try to get done on the weekend. Sometimes we succeeded, and sometimes we got 80% or something like that. But gradually the cottage got into shape, and then we hired some people for doing insulation, and the biggest thing I think was putting the water in so that ladies could have their own washroom and they didn't have to go to the outhouse.
Yeah. That was an addition on to the end of the cottage.
Yeah. But I wouldn't change much if I had to do it all over again, I don't think.
We could have drove the price down a little bit if you had seen the inside, I guess.
I suppose. But you don't regret those things.
No.
It's been an adventure for the last, when did we buy it? 69?
69, yeah.
Oh my God. 50, that's
Yeah,
over 50 years.
yeah.
Well, and then we, of course, we had to go to church in Spruceville, and that created a whole new family of friends and people that have been very nice to us, and we've gone there for all those years. It was a lot busier when we first went. There were a lot more people there. But some of the people that were there when we went are still there.
Like Eric and Lorna?
Pardon?
Eric and Lorna?
Yeah, Eric and Lorna, that's 2 of the standbys. But it was like having another family up there, another church family anyway. No regrets. I wouldn't change anything, I don't think.
Okay.
I'm gonna shake out.